Welcome back to the Chasing Happiness podcast, an honest podcast about finding happiness, what it really means, and the process of getting there. My name is Crystal, and today I am talking to someone who I discovered, although I can't really use the word discovered because she kind of came up in my For You page on TikTok. Chelsea, I cannot wait to talk to you today. But for people who don't know you, I want you to introduce yourself. But before you do that, the reason I discovered you or came across you on TikTok was because you had this video that came up on my For You page that was basically saying the reason that you're doing what you're doing, the reason that you're sharing is because you didn't want other women to feel alone and you wanted to inspire them. And instantly my heart was like, I love this woman. I don't even know who she is. I am following her everywhere. So for people who are listening, who maybe aren't on TikTok or haven't seen you yet, introduce yourself to everybody listening.
That is so kind, number one. I am so flattered. But for everyone listening, I'm Chelsea. I am a content creator, TikToker, person of the universe. I'm passionate about self-development, empowering other women, and just trying to figure out a way to make it through life a little easier and how to make it easier for other people along the way.
And I love this because one of the things that you have on your profile is you are the CEO of being yourself. And I was just like, oh my God, we should all be that. But most of us are not that. It takes us a long time on our personal journey to get to that part. So explain to me and everyone listening, how did you get to this place? Because not everybody wakes up one morning and goes, okay, I'm going to share my personal journey, my story, the things I'm doing with the world. A lot of people never get to that place. So how did you get here?
You know, it was all just one big happy accident. I never intended to be in the position that I'm in. I never even intended to become a TikToker. It just all happened very fast, honestly. I was making videos about a bunch of random different things. And then I made a video one night in my bedroom, no makeup on, no prep. I was thinking about kind of how I ended up where I am and how my life was before and how it is now. I before the pandemic, I had a completely different life from the one that I have now. I worked a job where I was slaving away 7 days a week. I worked in the fashion industry. I would work 12, 14-hour days, and my pay wasn't in line with the amount of work I was doing. And it took the pandemic to kind of snap me out of that mindset. You know, when you're on that hamster wheel and you're going and going and going, you don't see that there's another way that you could be living.
Right.
And there was a moment in the pandemic where my mind just snapped out of it. And I was like, what am I doing? Because it had been 8 years that I had been on that wheel and I was ready to get off. And I got off and somehow I ended up in a position where my life was totally different. And I decided to make this TikTok video just about how crazy life was before the pandemic and how different it is now. And I wasn't expecting anyone to understand where I came from. I didn't know anyone in my real life that had gone through what I went through. Sure. And the response was unbelievable. Millions and millions of men, women, all different ages from around the world had been through or were going through what I had gone through. And they also could not believe that there were so many people in the same situation. And that was the beginning. And from then on, it just kept going.
I love this. I love this because this is exactly how I feel like everybody I talk to, their journey goes. You feel like you're doing it alone. You feel like you're struggling through this life thing alone because nobody is talking about what they're going through. We don't live in a society where it's okay necessarily to be that open about what your struggles are, what your imperfections are, all of those things, but we all have them. And so when someone stands up and says, hey, I just can't do this crazy world that we're supposed to do this way, everybody around them goes, oh my God, me either. Okay, what do we do now? And so I absolutely love this and I adore you. And I cannot tell you, like we were talking before we started recording, you posted a video the other day, and now this will air in a few weeks. So people will have to go back in your TikTok feed. But you posted a video the other day about clean laundry. Like you just feel better when you get into like clean sheets at the end of the day. And I told you, I sent it to everybody I knew. because I was like, this is why I wear clean pajamas every night. I never wear the same pajamas twice. She's 100% right. Like, it's those little things that sometimes change your whole mindset and your whole perspective on the life you're living.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I feel like, as you said, society pushes us in this corner where it's kind of like, cover anything that could be bad. Like, don't talk about any of the bad stuff. We're only going to talk about the positive stuff. We're not going to talk about any of the weird, quirky stuff. Just like everyone just like keep a straight face and like keep going. But like, once you start having those conversations, it changes your whole life. Like, the human connection is so important, and just being able to relate to other people. It's all about feeling less alone.
Yes, absolutely. And TikTok has been a great thing for me personally, as far as that goes. Now, I'm fairly new to TikTok. I just joined TikTok in March. So like, I only have a few months of TikTok under my belt. But it's funny because as I talk to people who don't know what TikTok is or have never actually been on TikTok, they're like, I don't really want to be dancing in a video. And I'm like, oh my God, you have no idea what TikTok is, because that's the thought process I had until I got on it. And I'll tell you, the thing that got me on it was I watched a video Gary Vee had posted on Instagram. And it was saying that I think there's like 1 billion or 2 billion people that are actually on TikTok. Like, it's this community of people from around the world that you don't get on any other social media network. And literally every topic in the world is covered somewhere on TikTok. And I was like, okay, well, I'll at least check it out. And I hopped on, and for like literally the first 3 weeks, I was like absorbed in these people who are like focused on self-improvement and changing their lives and all of these spiritual things. And I got sucked in. I got so sucked in. But it is this community where you can find community of like-minded people, and you don't necessarily get that on other social media platforms.
No, it's an amazing app. And I have the same conversations with people all the time. When I tell them like, oh, I post on TikTok, they go, oh, you dance? And I'm like, no, I don't dance. And they're like, I don't know if I could ever download TikTok. It's just not for me. And I should be paid by TikTok, because I convince so many people like, no, you have to join this app. The way that it works is it's a brilliant app that can read what you're interested in and then push content toward you that will meet your interests. So the experience that you have is different from the experience that I have on the app. That's different than the experience my best friend has on the app. And it's so genius to me. And I think we're still in the beginning stages of this app, and it's gonna change the world. It's already changed my life.
100%. I agree with you because of the algorithm. It's the fact that it pushes the things that you start to like, the things that you interact with. Whereas when I go on Instagram, I'm pushed not only with ads, but with whatever is getting, the most views or likes or whatever, versus the things I actually want to see, which is how I, sort of came across you, because you came up on my For You page and I was like, oh my God, this woman is brilliant. I adore her. So that algorithm is literally changing how we interact with social media, which I think is genius.
Yep. I think it's going to be amazing to see what it's going to look like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I think it's only going to get better.
100%. And you create a lot of content. So I have to ask, as someone who runs a business and has to create content for that business, how on earth do you come up with all the stuff that you do? Because it's got to be a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but I just it flows organically. When I think of something in my head, I'm like, oh, let me just say this out loud in a video. And I've found, I'm a huge fan of therapy. I'm a huge fan of talk therapy. I've done all different kinds of therapy. And by saying things out loud and releasing that from you, it instantly makes me feel better. And definitely knowing that I have people around the world who can relate to what I'm saying. It's this instant human contact, even though we're not together, even though we're not in the same room, just having that community is so beautiful and so important to me that I want to continue to feed into that community and grow it and develop it. It's something that I'm really passionate about. So for me, at times it can be frustrating, but it's very fulfilling, and it feels easy most of the time.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. And you know what? It's funny because out of all the social media platforms, I would say, just in my limited personal experience with TikTok, that it's actually the easiest one to do that with because TikTok is the place where you can show up without makeup. You can show up, with tears. You can show up in all of the human elements of an actual life and nobody's judging you. It's not like on Instagram where it's like, that picture's not pretty. We don't want to see that, right? Like it's a different kind of thing. It's about being human in the moment.
Yep. Everyone wants to see real people. They want to hold up their phone and feel like they're FaceTiming with you. They don't want this perfect person on the other side of the camera. And I've found through doing my videos, I do a lot of videos. So I see videos that do well and videos that don't do well. And the videos that I spend the most time on and the ones that I, do my hair and do the whole thing, it doesn't do as well as the videos like the one I was talking about before, where
Right.
I'm in my bedroom at the end of the night with no makeup on and an old sweatshirt and just being, showing up as myself.
Yes. I 100% agree with you. It's funny because like I said, TikTok was not something I was going to join. And now that I've spent a few months on the platform, it has almost become kind of like therapy because even when I'm not posting a video, I'm consuming someone else's video and I feel connected. Or I reach out to someone like you and say, hey, oh my God, this was great. Thank you. I feel better. I would love to chat with you or something. And it rather than making us feel disconnected in the social media realm, it actually makes us feel more connected to people.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting because when the internet first came out and in previous years, there was all of this stigma against the internet, that the internet is going to be, the end of human connection. And this is ruining society. And I think that in-person connection is important. I do think that there's a lot of value there, but a lot of the times it's harder when you're in person to let down that wall and to be yourself. And I think that through TikTok or through other forms of the internet, it's a lot easier to let that wall and to be yourself and feel encouraged to be yourself.
Yes. That encouragement, I think, is huge too. Because the one thing, and I have very limited experience with TikTok so far, but the one thing I have noticed is there's way more positivity on TikTok than the negativity, which I find is extreme on things like Facebook and even sometimes Instagram. But on TikTok, especially, there is this community of people who come out to support you and purposefully say nice, kind things to each other, which I think is amazing.
Oh, yeah. I think there's so much negativity in the world, and wherever you can find those outlets of joy and happiness, you have to take advantage of that.
100%, which brings me to a question. How are you nowadays, especially with as much content as you're creating and the changes that have happened in your life? How are you finding joy and happiness?
How am I finding joy and happiness? I spend a lot of time alone. I find a lot of joy and happiness in spending time with myself. And that's a journey that I've been on for a really, really long time. Starting from not being able to spend any time alone to learning how to love myself. And I've found that I fill up my own cup when I have that solo time, when I have the time to reflect, to be with myself and to love being with myself. So I do a lot of going out to eat by myself. I do a lot of going to the park by myself, I travel a lot alone. And that's where I've found, the greatest source of self-fulfillment.
I love that. And the traveling alone is huge for people who listen to this podcast. They know I love to travel. So the last couple of years has really killed me because I'm Canadian. So our, sort of lockdowns and things have been much more drastic than most people around the world. And we couldn't really travel freely. And so because we couldn't travel freely, I moved across the country during the pandemic. I was like, I need a change. And so I just moved across the country. But now that travel is back, I am so excited because traveling, especially when you do it solo, changes you because you learn so much about yourself.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I don't even know. Traveling alone was another thing in my life that started off as a happy accident. I wanted to see things. I wanted to experience different life and different cultures. And I remember the first time I ever traveled alone, I went to San Francisco. I always wanted to go to San Francisco. And this was probably, almost 10 years ago now. And I had never really been anywhere. I was from Connecticut. I moved to New York, and then I never traveled anywhere else other than that. So it was my first time on the West Coast. And I stayed at this Airbnb, and it was a 3-bedroom Airbnb, but they had bunk beds in the 2 other rooms. So you were bunking with 3 other people in the room. And I remember meeting the people who ran the Airbnb, and they were pretty, like, they had been well traveled. Obviously, they ran this Airbnb, so they met a lot of different people. And the way that they spoke to me and the way that they asked me questions changed my life. It changed my life because I had never met people who were so genuinely curious about other people's experience and the life they lived and the way that they felt about certain things. And that was, it was such a small moment, but I remember that was when I was hooked. That was when I was like, I need to meet different people. I have to do this for myself. I have to ask people questions. I have to share my experiences. And that was really when all of this started, I would say, when all this journey started.
I love that. And I love that when I talk to people about travel, because I'm such a travel person, that everyone has one story. Like for me, my first solo trip was in my early 30s, and it was to Ireland because my grandpa was Irish and he died when I was 11, and I wanted to honor him and sort of make that my first trip. And let me tell you, making a solo trip for the first time in your 30s to a country you've never been to before is quite an experience. But it was such a transformative experience. And when I talk to people and I tell that story, I hear their story, because everybody who travels has one of those stories, right? And it's life-changing.
Yeah. And I have a lot of friends in my life who have recently started solo traveling, or they're planning out their first solo trip. And when I hear them, I can always, you get to that point where they tell that story, and it's amazing. It's amazing because a lot of people think that they can't do it. And that's the thing. A lot of people tell me, I don't think I can ever do that. I don't think I could be alone like that. I don't think I could be in that experience. But everyone, I promise you, you're right. Everyone has that same story when you could tell they're hooked.
Yes, 100%. And that's exactly what you go through. For everybody listening, if you've never done a solo trip, you 100%, the whole time you're starting that journey, you think to yourself, I can't do this. Am I crazy? Why am I doing this? And like for me, I had a nervous breakdown at 5 a.m. walking the streets of Dublin, because I didn't know before I went to Dublin that, it's a party town. So the bars stay open till like 3 a.m. and coffee shops don't open until like 9 a.m. because nobody's up at 5 a.m. But I was up at 5 a.m. Like you do have those moments. And then, you realize it's okay. I can handle this. You get on a train. Like I got on a train in Dublin and ended up somewhere I had never intended to be, totally got lost. You figure it out, and you learn so much about how you can actually figure things out. It's so important.
Yep. And through those moments, that's when you really grow into yourself. When you go through those difficult experiences, that's when the magic all happens.
Yes. Yes. And it is 100% magic, and I love it. But because I'm a travel person, now I want to ask, where's one place you want to go that you haven't been yet?
One place I want to go. I would love to go on a safari in Africa. That's the top of my bucket list. I would love to go on a safari. I would love to go to Kenya. I would love to go to South Africa. That's my big trip right now. Got to save up, a couple pennies here and there, but that's the top of my list, top of my bucket list of things that I want to do.
I love that. That's on my list too, mostly for 2 reasons. I have a friend in South Africa who I met on a cruise, actually. And there's a place in Africa, and I can't remember exactly where it is. I would have to look it up, but it's called Giraffe Manor.
Oh, I know.
Oh my God. Totally on my list.
Oh my God. It looks amazing. The pictures look like unbelievable. The giraffe come to your window. Like there's people who are like eating breakfast, and the giraffe puts its head through the window. And
I think my life would I don't know. I feel like my life would implode in the best possible way in that moment, because 100%. I would just be like I wouldn't know what joy is after that.
That would be the pinnacle. That's all I'm living for. What about you? What's your next place you want to go?
My next one, it's funny. Before the pandemic, I had all of these big bucket list ones, and then the pandemic happened and travel changed, and the world has changed a lot. It used to be Egypt, but now it's actually Bali.
Oh yeah. I heard it's beautiful.
I have heard it's beautiful, and I've heard it is a very healing and transformative place. Mm-hmm. So it is now at the top of my list, and mostly just because I feel like after the last couple of years personally, I need places that not only energize me, but also help me to center myself. And that feels like a place that would.
Definitely. It's on my list too. I would love to go there.
Maybe at some point we will cross paths while we travel.
Cross paths in Bali. I'll keep my fingers crossed for that one.
I love it. I love it. I do want to ask you a couple of questions, though, that I typically ask people who come on the podcast, because they tend to be catalysts for people who are listening to start to make changes or think about things in their personal life. Are you game to answer a few questions?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So the first question is, if you could have a conversation with anyone, living or dead, who would it be and why?
If I could have a conversation with anyone, I think it would be Oprah.
Ooh.
I think I would choose Oprah. I think Oprah changed the way that we had difficult conversations, and she changed the way that I looked at having difficult conversations. And it wasn't something I thought of so much when I was younger. I watched her show every day when I was younger. I watched it. There's some episodes I shouldn't have watched when I was like 10 years old.
Especially back in the beginning.
Oh yeah. It was crazy. She talked about everything, and she had people on there, and she would have, non-judgmental conversations about really, really hard subjects. And I just feel like she's such a compassionate, understanding person. And to have that environment where you can have those conversations and people can watch you have those conversations, I feel like she was one of the first and without a doubt the best at doing that.
Agreed, 100%. And I would love to just know how she pushed forward with that, because she did it at a time when that was not acceptable. Yeah. And she pushed that so that it became something that became acceptable in mainstream. And that couldn't have been easy.
No, she broke down a lot of barriers. I think to hear her story and what she went through would be amazing.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. She's definitely on my list. The next question is, if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
Gosh. If I could go back in time, I would probably go back to when I was in high school. And, I was always so concerned about keeping up with other people and doing what other people wanted me to do. And that's high school, that's college, that's in my 20s. Sometimes I still get the same thing now, even though I'm a lot better at it. But I would just tell myself to focus on staying on my own path and, be dedicated to your journey, and don't worry about what other people are doing. Just focus on what you want and what makes you happy, because I think most people get caught up in what we're supposed to be doing, in the life that we're supposed to be living, what other people want for us. And when you go down a path of doing what someone else wants you to do, you will never be happy. You will always be fulfilling someone else's dream, someone else's expectations of you. But you have to remember that it's your journey, it's your life, and you need to do what's important to you, because that's the only way that you are going to be happy.
Yes, I love this. And you bring up a point that I want to emphasize to everybody who's listening. Even for people who are doing the work, even for people who are on this journey, sometimes you fall back into that old habit and you realize, oh my God, I'm not actually following my path. It's okay when that happens, as long as you're recognizing that it happens, so that you can get back on track to what's important to you.
Yep. It happens to me sometimes too. And I think sometimes those moments are important. It's not linear. It's definitely not linear. But those moments of realization are important, because then you become even more focused on what you want and what you don't want. You're able to see what you don't want.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. The next question is, what inspires you?
What inspires me? Oh my gosh. Travel inspires me. Art. I love going to the museum. I love walking around the museum. Being in New York City, I love people watching. I love being on the train. I love being outside coffee shops and watching people. I find a lot of inspiration just in everyday life from walking around. I feel like there's inspiration everywhere. You just have to see it. And I remember I was in fashion school. When I first moved to New York, I was in fashion school. And one of my professors told us, if you need inspiration, just open your eyes. Just open your eyes and look around you. There's inspiration everywhere. You don't have to go to like crazy places. As much as travel does inspire me, you can just open your eyes and look at nature, look at the sky, look at people around you. There's inspiration that's everywhere.
I love that. And it is so, so true. So, for everyone who's listening, go back and listen to that again, because I think it is so vitally important for us to remind ourselves of that, because sometimes we get so busy chasing the dream or chasing the next thing that we forget. And we end up so singularly focused that we don't pay attention to the things around us that do inspire us. So, that's so, so important. So, thank you for that.
Welcome.
I do want to ask you, because you live in New York, I have only been to New York once, and it was years ago, but everyone I talk to who lives in New York says part of their favorite experience is the people. It's the people watching, it's the being out in the crowds. And New York is a pretty busy and hectic place. So what is it that makes it that sort of a city? Is it just the atmosphere?
I think it's that you can come to New York and do whatever you want to do. You know, there's everyone from artists to finance people to fashion industry. New York has something for everyone. Every kind of restaurant, every kind of Broadway show, every kind of theater. Expensive, inexpensive, it's whatever you want to do is here. And I think that's why there's so many people who come here, because there's truly something for everyone. And then there's something for everyone to aspire to if you want to do something else. So it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. And I think that, yeah, whatever you want to do, you can find it in New York.
I love that. You're making me want to travel back to New York now. So the last question is, what does happiness mean to you?
Does happiness mean to me? I think happiness is that moment when the world seems like it stops. The world stops and you're existing and you're looking at everything around you and you're just at peace. I feel like we all have those moments when you have those beautiful moments when it feels like you know that you're alive and you know that everything's okay and you're grateful for what you have. And yeah, everything is just, you have that moment of peace, that moment of clarity that I'm alive and this is happening. And that's happiness.
God, that is such a good answer. And people can't actually see you because this is a podcast, but like the way you light up when you describe that, like I want to be like right next to you and like give you a giant hug and just, oh, that is such a good answer. I love
think
that.
We all have those moments, and sometimes they're, few and far between, and sometimes they're fleeting, but we all have to recognize like when that moment happens and appreciate it. Like sometimes I have those moments where I'm like, I am so happy right now. And sometimes I'll say it out loud and sometimes I'll say it to myself, but you have to recognize when those moments happen and take them and run with it.
Oh, I love that. And I think that is the perfect place to end this, because that is such a great piece of advice for everybody who's listening. So for everyone who is listening, I, of course, as always, will share in the show notes all of the links so that you can follow Chelsea. You can get in touch. You can do whatever your heart desires, even if it is just watch her TikToks, because let me tell you, they are fabulous. No matter what they are, I am so unbelievably obsessed with them all, because it's just such a great reminder that we are all on this crazy journey together. Even if we're in different boats in the same ocean, it's still a struggle for everyone. It's still a journey for everyone. It has its moments where it's joyful and good, and then other moments where maybe not so much, and it's all okay. So I, of course, want you to follow as well, and I will post in the show notes all of the links to do that. Chelsea, before I let you go, is there anything else you want to say?
No, that is it. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. This was happiness.
You are totally happiness. Reaching through and giving you a hug. I have loved having you on, and I am happy to have you back on the podcast anytime. Feel free to reach out, and I will happily have another conversation with you, because you are an amazing human. And I hope someday to meet you in real life.
Yes, in Bali.
Yes, in Bali. Exactly. We will make it happen.
Thank you so much, Crystal.
Thank you for joining me. And thank you all for listening. I hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. If you know somebody who you think will find it helpful or enjoy it as well, please feel free to share it with them. And I hope you guys have a great week. We will chat with you next week. Bye for now.